So that systemic constructionist approach, which is looking at how we work differently, is already starting to take us out of the field of a psychological awareness and psychological model and into the field that here I'm calling learning and inquiry, the approach of the organisation that is about developing as a learning organisation that's continuously seeking to see whether what it's doing is fitting the needs of the client group and the environment, and developing within the organisation what in therapeutic community terms, back in the second half of the 20th century, they called a culture of inquiry, where you are curious, you're interested to know what's working. The opposite of a culture of inquiry, well, there's two opposites really. One is a culture of blame. When something goes wrong, who do we blame for it? Disciplinaries and so on and so on and so on. So a culture of blame is absolutely inimical to the kind of ways of understanding and learning from our experience that we need to develop. The other opposite to a culture of inquiry is a culture of adherence to a particular model of working, whether it works with this client or this situation or not, or adherence to the contract that you have with the commissioners and the funders that say, we only do this because this is what we're funded to do. We're all forced to some extent to go down that path, but the extent to which you have some flexibility, the extent to which you have some ability to do things differently when they're needed, that moves us away from the cultural adherence and something which can be more person-centered, more flexible, more responsive, more holistic. So we looked at evaluation as one of the core areas of outcomes evaluation or broader evaluation. Action learning is a form of evaluation. Ongoing assessment and formative evaluation is the kind of arrangement people have when you have an external, perhaps an assessing or a research body that comes and looks at a developing service rather than just looking at the outcomes that are produced. That's what they sometimes call summative rather than formative evaluation. And these are all aspects of the continuous learning and inquiry that an organisation will need to be involved in if it's working with clients with complex needs and in complex partnership arrangements. We talked of evidence-generating practice and formal research as being a really important thing for the sector. It's not a culture of research is not a culture that is as embedded in homelessness as it is in many of the other quote-unquote professions. In some fields, like psychology, research is very, very deeply written into the whole approach of the organisation. But by talking about psychologically informed environments, we were wanting to encourage that, but not make it the be-all and end-all of a psychologically informed way of working. So here, in this formulation, evidence-generating practice and producing formal research have been not demoted exactly, but they're seen as examples of the learning and inquiry mindset. They're no longer the definitive, the key theme, but they are one of the expressions, one of the options, one of the examples that would evidence, for example, the fact that a particular organisation is seriously involved in learning and developing a culture of inquiry. So it becomes an evidence criterion or an evidence category rather than being the overall terminology. So, moving on through, other examples of learning and inquiry are working in partnerships and forums to discuss issues and the complexity of needs and where a service fits in with other needs. So working within partnerships and forums can be seen as an expression of the learning and inquiry model. But it also takes us into the next area that we need to look at, which is the development of more integrated pathways, the more systemic